So I was supposed to have like a physical this morning, um, because got like an oral surgery possibly coming up, and I chickened out and didn't go. It's kind of been my life right now. So
When you text me and said, if I don't cancel it, I'm like, he's going to cancel it.
yeah, I had to send that to you via text so I could see it, and then I r- reckon with the reality of I'm probably going to cancel this, and I just did, So I'm not against going to the. I mean, I'm trying to be truthful here. I'm not against going to the doctor. I don't like going to the doctor. If I'm going to the doctor, something is really, really wrong, majorly wrong. Like I feel like I'm probably dying, so which means in my mind, if the doctor kills me, well, I was probably dying anyway, so it's worth a shot. That's just my take on the medical world. And so, uh, you know, this doctor needed me to go get blood work done, and I'm like, no, like I'm not doing that. So it was like, but it's very important. And so we disagreed on what was important and was not important. Obviously he's the professional and I'm the patient, but, I can read some and research, and I'm just like, I don't think so. So weird fact about me, I did bring this up, I think in our first episode. I don't do veins, needles and veins. I don't so much mind needles by themselves, but needles and veins don't work very well for me. I'll turn into Rain Man, about Judge Wapner at 5 p.m. like his own. Like I will turn into Rain Man. Um, you know, I will be on the ground, flipping and flopping around, not on purpose, but I have this involuntary Rain Man response if you get near my veins. And so I was trying to work myself up to go do this all weekend long. I've been playing like loud rock music in my head and like WWE entrance themes because I thought I would take like some AirPods or something in there. And I'm like, okay, so while they're doing this, so I'm like, I'm going through, this was my drive to Rock Eagle. I'm going through all the different like wrestlers things, which one could get me going, so I'm like Cody Rhodes. I'm like, that's more of a feel good. I need to get mad. I need the adrenaline pumping. So then I found a different version of his that I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this. Then I'm like, Drew McIntyre's got a pretty cool theme. And then I'm going through Randy Orton. I hear voices. I'm like, if I do pass out, that's probably not a great song to be playing. So decided not to do that. I was just working through everything. And then I decided maybe I'll just get like a feel good song. And so then I was like, Luke Bryan, that's my kind of night. And I'm like, fishing on a Flint River, it's like old school Motown bass kick behind country singer. Ultimately, after going through all of this and listening to all this music, I decided to cancel. Because after I got home from Rock Eagle, my wife was talking to me, trying to encourage me. You can do this. You can do this. And I was like, I know I can. I know what's going to happen. I know I can drive myself there. But she said, well, here, let's just practice. And literally, I'm sitting in a playroom with my son playing dinosaurs. And my wife walks over to me, grabs my arm, and starts rubbing the vein site. And I break into a cold sweat, lose the color in my face. I'm like, stop. I'm out. I can't even. I'm sitting in a playroom. There's nothing hard about this at all. And I can't even let you touch my vein. You're my wife. I'm like, I'm done. Jesus going to have to heal me, or we're going to find some other measures. So, yeah, that's my weekend, dude. Beat that, man.
I don't think I can. We had a birthday party. We had a great time. Already turned 4. Lots of fun. If you watched the last few episodes, Ryan and I have both spent time staring at the floor, wondering how everything went so wrong. You've heard the crash, you've heard about the quicksand, but there's a question that comes immediately after you hit rock bottom, and it might be the hardest one to answer. Now what? What do you do when the identity you've built your entire life around is suddenly gone? What do you build when the house burns down? Welcome back to Out of the Desert. I'm Bryan Evans, joined as always by Ryan Herrington. And as you can tell, we're recording remotely today, but we wanted to get together for this very specific conversation. So, Ryan, we spent the last 2 weeks unpacking some very heavy baggage. pretty heavy stuff for both of us. We both were stressed out about it. We both didn't sleep very well in the days leading up to each episode. But so today we want to talk about how we start walking again once you put all that baggage down.
Yeah, that's important, right? Because if you just leave the desert and then pitch your tent, like, you really haven't done anything. I said the desert experience. It is that. It needs to be an experience. It doesn't need to be the end all be all of the rest of your life. And I think if we're not careful, we can, these things can happen to us and then they can debilitate us. We can be debilitated by it. We can kind of enter into like a victim mentality of, woe is me, or a bitterness of anger with the rest of my life, mad because of what happened to me. Which in many ways means you probably haven't left the desert. Things have happened to you, but you're still hanging on the peripheral there. You're instead of moving on and moving forward. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the big thing for you and I. And I think we probably touched on some of that, in our stories of kind of how God helped us move on. Obviously, I think the majority of our stories probably talked a lot about what it looked like in the desert for you and I. And dude, you had some stuff, man. You definitely walked through some tough situations for sure.
Yeah, I think we both experienced something. It'd be very easy to just lay down in the desert and just be like, okay, you know what, I'm done. And we both kind of went through that too. And but yeah, if we had done that, if we would have just stayed right there, then we would have had the other side of the story. We wouldn't have ever had the positive things that came out of it. And I just think about it all the time. Is like, here I am 6 years out of that point of my desert, the lowest point, the rock bottom point, and look back and I'm like, if I had to decide to give up then none of the things I have now would be here. I mean, I wouldn't,
right.
I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yeah.
And so it's always easy to look back, right? I mean, it's easy to look back and be like, yeah, I'm so much better off now. But I think that's why it's so important that when you're in those places, just to think like, hey, there's something better.
Yeah, I think you got to. I think you've got to have a perspective that this too shall pass, right? That this is not going to be the rest of my life. But when you're in the desert, that's truly what you are scared of. Like, this is the rest of my life. I'll never get out of this. I'll never get over this. I can't live this way. You and I both kind of talked about those moments. I'm in a rental house, you're in a bathroom floor, where we're thinking, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I've messed up too much. There is not life on the other side of this. The desert has robbed me of everything. And, man, that's just a trick, man. That's us getting just, inundated with feelings and fear and guilt and, really that I don't know where to go next kind of situation, gets on our head and we get stuck. And, I know for me, in mine, I was at a point where I could not imagine life ever being worth anything at that point for me. And I don't mean that in the sense of, being a daddy wasn't enough. It was. And in so many ways, that's what saved me, was knowing that how much I love my girls and I want to be there for them, and in whatever capacity that was going to look like. It's the dream shattering, the idea of what life is supposed to be just falling apart. All of the effort and the energy that you pour into something only for it just to crash and burn, it's debilitating. And I would say even beyond that, when you can look at your own life and see where maybe you set the match a few times, right? But then you also see a few times where some others came in with a flamethrower and just kind of burned everything down for you as well. And you're going, this is not fair. This is not right. And there's all those feelings again, right? It's the victimhood. It's the, I don't deserve this. It's the bitterness. It's the anger. It's the depression. It's all that, like you talked about, dealing with that depression and so much, the guilt that you and I both talked about, of I'm not being what I'm supposed to be. I'm not following what I'm supposed to follow. All of those things, I think, try to follow. It keeps you in the desert. But then when you leave your desert, when you get on the other side of it, those feelings don't just disappear, right? I mean, I still wrestle with stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. Even thinking back, like, why do you think it is that sometimes it just takes in that physical and emotional rock bottom to finally get to the point where we're ready to just surrender to whatever may come?
Well, that's a good question. I think overall, people avoid pain. And I think people avoid confrontation. I think people avoid change. And I think if anything in our life resembles pain or confrontation or change, for most of us, we have an immediate defensive response to that. Well, I don't know about that. Now if I am instigating the change, it's a good thing. If someone else is instigating a change on my life, whoa, what's happening? I don't know about that. If I'm creating the pain, then that's one thing. If somebody else creates the pain for me, I just think overall, man, I think I'll answer it this way. I talked about in my story that I know that God was trying to get a hold of my attention about my relationship with him, about my theology, about my ministry. Before 2017, there were things that he was doing. My girls being born 2011, 2014 with Riley and Charlie, things happening, experiences in the church. Those were God's ways of saying, hey, there's something else I have for you. I'm trying to show you something. I want to do these things in your life. And all Ryan had to do was say, okay, I trust you. Let's go. But what I also knew was by saying, okay, I trust you, and that goes back to what I was talking about the story of, okay, well, that means I've got to admit I need help. I've got to admit that I'm struggling, or my marriage is in a mess, or I don't know where I land on some of the theology that I'm supposed to be preaching in this denomination that I'm in. That means I'm going to lose my career. That means everybody's going to see these things. And so I knew God was trying to pull me somewhere. I was fighting against him because I couldn't see how that would be beneficial. And I think when God is doing something, when God is moving, I don't think he makes it have to be rock bottom. I think rock bottom sometimes happen because we don't trust him enough to let him do it before he gets there. Rock bottom, when you're there, you don't have any other choices but to trust at that point. You've played your last card, right? It's over. Like there's no more cards in the deck. There's no more phone calls to make. There's no lifelines. Like it's it. And I think God gets us there, follows us there, painfully as a parent, watches us refuse his hand, refuse correction, refuse, him trying to move our story somewhere else. He watches us painfully as a parent. You watch your kids do this. I watch my kids do this. Hey, I don't think you need to do that. Oh, I know what I'm doing. And you're going, do you? I mean, yeah, I'm trying to help you. But then as a loving parent, as you would for your kids, I would for my kids, they fall, hit rock bottom. There's literally nowhere else to go. He is that loving father saying, okay, are you ready now? Let me love you. Let's rebuild this thing together. And I think that's the beauty of it. So, it's a long answer to a short question. I mean, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Why do you think it took you hitting rock bottom to kind of snap out of it?
Well, I think it's one of those things as humans in general, but also especially as men, it's hard to, first of all, admit that you need help.
Yeah.
It's hard to admit that you're wrong. And so just like you're saying, like, yeah. it comes to a point where you're doing the best you know to do. Especially growing up in church, especially having faith, we should know, like, God has our best interests at heart. It may not be easy here and there, but if we feel like we should do a certain thing, we should do it because He said we should do it. But that's not always as easy to follow through on.
Yeah.
And so even with that, like you can do everything right in your mind, like going to church, trying to be the best pastor you can, trying to be the best youth pastor I can, trying to do the best you can. But if it's not the right steps that we're supposed to be at, then you can still end up in the desert.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That can be a little bit kind of disheartening in a way, because it's like, well, I mean, what's the point in trying then? But the thing that is I don't think that rock bottom place is a place to break us. It's not a punishment.
No.
Sometimes it's just to give us a reset.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can think about if you dislocate your arm, you're in a lot of pain. Now, setting it back is going to be in a lot more pain, but you're going to end up being a whole lot better place once it's said and done, where your arm's functional again like it's supposed to be. And so that's kind of my take on it from that perspective.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, it is God trying to say, hey, let me work this stuff out. And it's us sometimes refusing to let Him. So He lets us continue. And ultimately, He knows it's going to hurt. He sees the crash coming before it gets there, right? And He knows what's going to happen. And He's just waiting for us because He realizes they either were too stubborn, too fearful, whatever the emotions are that are keeping us from whatever, trusting Him or whatever. It is going to take that rock bottom. I think I was thinking about this, and man, this is going to sound ugly, but I don't mean it to be ugly. But we've talked about us kind of growing up in church and everything. One of the reasons I think some people, especially in a spiritual sense, it takes rock bottom is because we confuse prayer with procrastination. We'll say, well, I'm praying about it. No, you're not. You just don't want to deal with it right now. So, instead of dealing with it, you throw up a prayer, a Hail Mary. Lord, please fix this in my life. And God's going, I'm trying, but you're refusing to let me. God, please show me what to do. I have, but you're refusing to follow. But we call ourselves praying like, well, I'm just waiting on God. No, you're really not. It's another way of procrastinating what we know we're supposed to be doing. So, and I think it's important to throw this in here real quick, because we're talking about, hitting rock bottom and things that have happened that lead us there, and, God trying to not allow us to get there. He's trying to pull us out before we get there. But I think it's important to also say this, that there have been times in my life, times in your life, I've heard your story, listen to my story. There's people I've talked to, people you've talked to, that sometimes rock bottom happens and it has nothing to do with anything that somebody has done. It's just life, right? Life just happened. There was not a sense of God trying to say, hey, don't do this because this is coming. That is certainly a massive part of many of our stories. But then there are also life events that happen where a person didn't do anything wrong. There was no disobedience. There was no not following. Life just happened, and you go from the mountaintop to the deepest valley you can find yourself in. And in that moment, I think those are the scariest, because it's like God allowed this big valley to hit. And then there is, like you said, it is a massive reset. It is a complete start over. And whether you end up in the desert of your own accord, you pitched your tent, got a backpack, took off running, or somebody booted you out the plane right over the Sahara. However you ended up there, I think the most important part is what happens when you get out. How are you going to live the rest of your life when you get out? Because you'll get out. You will. You'll come out on the other side. God's faithful. You'll come out on the other side. But what are you going to do with the rest of your life? I think of it like this. You mentioned, kind of getting up and moving on. If you come out of the desert, you've got sand all over you. right? You're dirty. I mean, you're hot, sunburnt, clothes probably a little ragged for the wear, just on a natural side. If you actually walk through the desert, there's going to be all of this thing. God kind of showed me that as I was processing through the things that happened afterward. Was you spend the rest of your life looking like a ragged individual that just made their way out of the desert and throwing sand at everybody that comes near you and mad because of life, or you can go take a shower. You can go live again. You can recognize that this spot you're standing in now is not where you were. There is a desert between where you started and now where your feet are planted. And I've got something else for you if you'll just trust me. But if you want to stand here and turn around and face where you came from and yell at everybody or feel sorry for yourself, you can do that, but you're going to miss everything that I've got waiting for you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a good point too. Like once we're in the desert, we can pretend like everything's fine and try to just go on like we are. In a lot of ways, I tried to do that for a while. I think that's why it was so long for me to even start to turn around and to start to recover from that. There are people people I know, I'm sure people that they're kind of stuck in a mentality where it's like, well, I've been through this desert place. It wasn't fun. I hated it. It was terrible. But I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned the whole deconstruction thing, because I think that's something we both kind of went through kind of around the same time, ironically.
Yeah.
But it's like if you tear down a house, I mentioned before in the last episode, if you tear down a house to deconstruct it without building it back, then you're going to be out in the cold, you'll get wet, you're going to be in the elements, and eventually what's left is going to rot and fall down. So what are your thoughts on like how do you start rebuilding your foundation without letting that bitterness just eat away at you and keep you from going further?
Wow, I mean that's good. I mean, you got the hard hitting questions today, man. That's good stuff. It's like, here, spill your life story, and I'll answer all these questions. No, I mean, how do you do it, man? It's a variety of things, man. It's having something to focus on besides the desert. For me, when I kind of was leaving the desert, 2017 happened, world fell apart. 2018, I was probably on the outsides of the desert at that point, but let's just be honest, where the desert ends, the perfect lush Garden of Eden does not begin. No, it's not like you walk out of the sand and immediately into paradise. There's still a trek to go. It's not nearly as desolate. It's not maybe as hot, but you're still kind of out in the wild a little bit. This is not the place where you pour the slab for the new house, right? You've got to walk a little ways. And so 2018 was still a little bit of a journey. Kind of went through the tough parts. I knew enough of why I was there and what God wanted to teach me. So then it was how to move forward. Man, one thing that happened for me is I wanted to tell my story so bad. And so episode 2 was the first time in now 9 years that I ever said anything about anything I've been through. When I started going through it, I just felt, very much in my heart, the Lord was telling me, hey, you just, I don't know how God talks to you, but he told me to shut up. It's like you're going to keep your mouth shut. You're going to put your head down and you're going to work and you're going to trust me, and it's going to be difficult, and you're not going to like what people are going to say and what people are going to think, but you let me worry about that and you do your thing. And that's really what he impressed on me. That's what I did. So I've kept my mouth shut for years and just kind of went about my way and did my thing. Some of the things he showed me, I think you have to focus on what's new. I think you have to focus on what God is promising you. The Bible tells us all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. We're told that the trying of our faith produces patience, and perseverance. We're told iron sharpens iron. I mean, there's all kinds of things in Scripture where we're told, that, hey, tough times are going to come.
Mhm.
And when they come, they're not designed to kill you. They're designed to make you stronger. They're designed to take you somewhere else and bring you somewhere else. And it's amazing. I know I look back in my life and I'm thinking, God, why didn't you do something? Why don't you do something? Why don't you do something? And God is going to do something, but that something sometimes is going to be a difficult thing. So I think it's focusing on, not forgetting where you came from, but I think we have to have a new vision of where God is trying to take us, and focus on the good and recognize, like you were talking about, I've got a foundation here. This is what God wants me to do. Okay. I've taken everything down. We're going to rebuild, but storms are still coming. The rain's still going to get here. It's cold as the dickens right now, right? I mean, 2 days ago I was in shorts and a t-shirt. Right now, like, I walked in the office because I still had the air turned up to 78 just in case. I forgot to put the heater on. I walked in the office this morning. Thermostat said 42 degrees. I'm like, good Lord, help me. The elements are coming. And I think we have to know that just because you survived the desert, it doesn't mean, all right, you did it. Congratulations. Here's your gold star. Just exists for the rest of your life. More stuff's coming. Now that we know who we are and what we've been through, we take those lessons and we start building and accept help. I think you said it best when you talked about at the end of my story, how God puts people in. You talked about in your story how God, and man, don't he do that? Like when we're isolating ourselves and when we're mad at the world and when we feel like no one cares, God's over there going, I've got these 3 or 4 people and they're coming your way, and here's 2 or 3 more people. So I think it's perspective, man. I think it's, don't forget where he came from, but focus on the promises of God and what's next. Put your head down, go to work, and pay attention to those things that God is bringing into your life. He didn't bring you out of the desert to die on the other side of it.
A few people have contacted us too to tell us their story, and the one question I've gotten a few times is like, well, how do you start? Like, where do you get started at? And I like the point you made about leading into the new things. Sometimes all it takes is look around and see what's in your hand, what's around you. Like, where do you start with what you have? I mean, because if you have nothing but what's in your hand and what you see around you, people start coming along, don't turn away help. I mean, accept the help.
Yeah.
Use what you have available to you.
Yeah.
Like for you, that was, I mean, you got into the world of vocational rehab. And so that's what you latched onto, what you went with, and that kind of brought you where you are today. I mean, quite literally.
Here we are, right?
For me, it was, I latched on whatever I could do, social media and things like that. And here we are today on a podcast because I developed a love for podcasts. We were working on the podcast.
That's right. You've brought up several times the children of Israel, right? Going through the desert. I think all 3 podcasts, they've come up. And so the thing about it is, first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, creation of all things, God is putting everything in motion. Then we hit straight from God made everything perfect. We all showed up and screwed it up, and then Exodus hits. And the next 4 books of the Bible, man, are brutal. Can I say that? They're brutal, man. I mean, especially Leviticus. Like, that is the desert for all 1-year biblical Bible readers. I mean, that's where you go. You get through Genesis, you're pumped. You're getting to Exodus. By halfway through it, you're going, oh, Lord, have mercy. You start working. Man, by the time you get Leviticus, you're like, and if you have this cloth and it's mixed with this cloth, you are unclean and you shall stay in your house and you should bring a something. Like, what? Like, I got polyester on right now with cotton. What world's going on? You should not eat anything with a cleft hoof. You should not eat seafood of any kind. Like, bubblegum shrimp is gone. We're not doing that. I mean, all of this stuff But at the end of that was the desert. That's God pulling all this stuff out of his people. You mentioned, you had to get rid of the idols, had to get rid of all this stuff. We read this stuff and go, man, why do you have all these rules? Well, I mean, God was obviously trying to show them you're not good enough on your own. Like, if you want to try to be good enough, then keep these rules. Well, I can't. Well, no, you can't. So trust me, and they get to the end of it. But then after those 5 books, then you got this book called Joshua. And starting off right from the get-go, Moses is gone. They're on the other side. They're getting ready to walk into this. And so where do you start when you're on the other side of the desert? Read the book of Joshua. It's God said, all right, Joshua, be strong. Be of good cheer, be of great courage, for I am with you. Wherever you go, I'm going to go with you. That's the verse behind my head. That's the verse that's on our website. That verse is on every job description we send out to people in our company, because that's become my life verse. It was always a verse I loved, but man, that verse came alive to me on the other side of the desert of, okay, you made it. This didn't kill you. Could have. Almost did. You kind of feel half dead from what you went through, but you're still here. I've got plans for you. Trust my plans. Be strong. Be courageous. Don't be discouraged. All that's there. Joshua 1:9. Don't be discouraged. I'm going to be with you. So now let's take off. Let's go. See all that over there is yours. Let's go get it. Let's go find out what's there. And in the process of doing that, you read those first several chapters of Joshua, like God is they're laying that foundation again. It's okay. We're walking into our new land. They're laying foundations. They're putting structures in place. They're putting beams in place of this new house. Well, this is how we're going to do this. And this is what we're going to do to make sure it's, you get, I think it's a Joshua 6, man. They're getting ready to fight, this country of Ai. And I guess that's the name of how I pronounce it. I mean, it's spelled AI. So
it's not really work for me.
Like, I don't know. They're going to fight this country, and God tells them, like, destroy everything. Don't bring the idols back to you. That's an Egypt thing. That's what you did before the desert. Don't just get rid of it. You don't need that. I'm enough. Remember what I did. What do? They go in there. 2 people decide, oh, look at these idols. They're pretty cool. I miss these. They take them, and then they get ready to go fight. And they get destroyed because they brought something from the desert with them. And Joshua comes and he's telling everybody, he's like, look, this is what happened. If we're going to move forward, if we're going to be who God wants us to be, if we're going to be a different person, you can't have this old stuff. Can't bring it with you. You want to take those idols and walk around with them, then you're going to be the same person you were in the desert. You're going to end up in the same place you were. And for me, Joshua was a huge book for me as I studied and was reading scripture on the other side of me, because Israelites went through the desert. Now what do you do? What's the next thing? Man, follow Joshua and see what God did and how God laid his foundations.
That was very good advice, because of course, we always want to help people who are going through a desert, have been through a desert. And so I think that's a good practical first step. I mean, read Joshua, start there, read Joshua.
Yeah. Yeah. Get rid of the stuff that would try to pull you back. That could be friendships. That could be relationships. There's a desire, usually a thing inside of us to kind of move back towards the familiar. And well, that's what I've always known. So I'm just going to go back to it. Wait a minute. Isn't that part of what led you into the desert? Just don't go back to that. God's got something new. And I think for me, that's kind of been something that I wrestled with and I think you, Mitch, you kind of wrestled with that as well. Of once we kind of got back on our feet a little bit, then it was this what now? And then, well, I mean, I've done this before, and there's this familiarity. And I'm not saying God don't use familiar things and redeems those things, but I think more times than not, I think God is saying, to borrow the King James here, behold, I do a new thing, right? I'm trying to do something new for you. Let me do it. Don't bring the old stuff with you. Let me do it.
Well, there's a lot of talk about not putting new wine in old wineskins, because it causes causes a mess. And so we want to, God gives us a new wineskin. We want to fill the new wineskin and have something better.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so for those of you watching, don't forget, you don't have to walk through the desert alone. We're here. We want to help walk with you, help you through your journey. So make sure you get our website, thejoshuatree.org/out-of-the-desert, and hit that contact form. Let us know what you're walking through, or share how you survived your own quicksand. We read every single one of the ones that come in, so it's helpful for us to see like what you're going through and how we can possibly help you through that. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, and make sure you leave a review so we can help more people and help them find their way out of the sand. And remember what we talked about today. If nobody else has told you lately, we believe in you. You've got this. We're here. We're cheering you on. We're on your side. The desert may be right where you are right now, but it's not who you are. So keep that in mind, and keep moving forward, and we'll see you next week on Out of the Desert.